Okay, hello everybody. My name is Bryan Gage. I'm a professional artist and industrial designer, and today I'm going to go ahead and show you how to draw and design your very own sports water bottle. Now with something like a sports water bottle, we're going to go ahead and start out with a cylinder shape. Now we're going to be drawing this in what we call a three-point perspective. Okay, as you can see, I'm kind of building ellipses, and with each and every ellipse, actually the degree of the ellipse starts to close. Now if you notice this circle at the bottom, what I'm pointing to right here, it's essentially a 360-degree circle, but as we go up in degree of circle, this circular shape, right? Obviously it kind of starts to squash and it becomes an ellipse. Now as we tend to go up this cylinder shape, this ellipse starts to close, right? So we go from a 360-degree circle, and then we end up to where we're sitting at around probably an 80 or a 90-degree ellipse. Now this kind of gives us an idea of the shape of our bottle. Okay, and very quickly, once we have established these ellipses, we can then kind of start to work around this kind of cylinder shape. Okay, so as you can see, this water bottle kind of very quickly takes shape from here. Now today, if you notice, I'm using a digital software. This is Autodesk Sketchbook. If you're not familiar with this software, I highly recommend it, especially if you're kind of just starting out, if you're in high school or if you're in college. This is a great way of learning how to kind of draw and design digitally. I use a Wacom tablet. If you don't know Wacom, it's a W-A-C-O-M. Wacom, if you go onto their website, you can purchase a tablet. The tablet hooks into the computer or your laptop, and from there you can go ahead and start using a stylus, and I'm using a stylus right now. It's great to learn on pen and paper, but I suggest if you're in high school, if you're in college, this becomes a really important aspect of your design career. I've had my Wacom tablet for around 10 years. You know, I think I spent at the time around $300, but it was definitely well worth the money. If you have the ability to even get yourself an iPad, it's another great tool, especially with the development of the styluses nowadays are working really quite well. And so this is a great way of kind of expressing your designs, whether you're on the bus, whether you're sitting at in a coffee shop or whatever. This becomes a great method, a great tool for kind of understanding your ideas really quickly. So right now I'm kind of just working my way around this design. Again, this is a very kind of simplified design. It's really just kind of show you what kind of shapes we need to produce in order to get this bottle to look as if you can essentially like pick it up with your hand. That's kind of where you want to be as an industrial designer, kind of that ability to quickly draw a three-dimensional shape on 2D paper. Again, because this is a digital software, it becomes much easier to erase. Obviously, you can do an undo button as many times as you like, and this is the wonderful thing about our digital tools these days. But what I suggest if you're kind of just starting out as a younger designer, pen and paper works fantastic, and it's actually a much better way of kind of starting out this process as an industrial designer. Now what I'm showing you here is I'm giving you kind of the essence of what it is to be able to put this design into essentially a cube, right? And so most designs start out with a cube-like structure. Okay, so if we were to put this into a cube, this is kind of what you would see, right? And then if we eliminated, say, the side of the cube, you get a silhouette shape. Now what I'm doing here is kind of just cross-hatching, just to give it a little shadow, a little body, so that the eye kind of understands it. Now next, I'm going to add some line weight. And now a line weight is essentially just kind of making the existing lines just a little bit darker, and this is kind of what we call a line weight. And these line weights are really important to understanding, again, to kind of letting the eye gain a better understanding of this three-dimensional object. Now at this stage, not everything has to be perfect in terms of its symmetry. Like this is a little asymmetric, and that's okay. If you really want to get it perfect, you can. But right now we're kind of just ideating and trying to understand just this basic shape of this bottle, right? Okay, so from here you can kind of just start to cut away at this bottle shape as well. So if we wanted to make it somehow ergonomic, ergonomic meaning that, you know, obviously the human hand needs to be able to kind of use this bottle. So if we wanted to give this bottle a type of grip, we can go ahead and try and do that, for instance. So if we have a type of finger pattern, right? And especially in sports, our hands tend to get a little sweaty. So at this time, I'm already starting to think, oh, well, you know, maybe a nice rubber might work well for this bottle design. Instead of being plastic, for instance, plastic might not work so well. So how about a rubber or a polymer? So from here, I'm already starting to understand our basic materials, for instance, that might make this design work well. Okay, now the important thing is to always understand that this is a cylinder shape. It can be really easy sometimes to get lost in the fact that this is on two-dimensional paper, but you'll always have to keep in mind that this is a three-dimensional shape, and everything that you draw has to be done accordingly. Okay, so this bottle is starting to kind of take on a more refined shape, something which is a little bit more sophisticated, and that's what we kind of want. Okay, so if you zoom out, you can already start to gain a better understanding of what this bottle design might look like. Now again, you can just kind of go back over some of these lines that might need a little bit more work to them. Especially like these corners here tend to be really important. Okay, and you can go ahead and fill in and shade, and all of a sudden this drawing starts to take on a lot more meaning. Okay, and again, the wonderful thing about digital software is all of a sudden we have kind of the basic wireframe of this design. Now if you just quickly go ahead and paint over the object, or paint beneath it, if we just move our layers below kind of this wireframe and reduce the opacity, all of a sudden this object takes on a lot more dimension. Okay, every artist and designer kind of does their own quick means of drawing and designing. This is just kind of typically the way that I do it. There are kind of faster methods. Photoshop is great, but it's better for just simply doing more finalized renders, whereas I would recommend this kind of software, especially if you're starting out. Again, it's typically a lot easier to kind of get your ideas down on paper really quickly. Now from here, I'll show you real quick how to just simply go over this with an airbrush. Now an airbrush, don't overdo it. A couple of really kind of quick swipes with an airbrush is really all you need. Students really typically love the airbrush to the point of doing way too much in the beginning. Just be aware that you don't need that much airbrush, right? And all of a sudden this design of ours takes on more dimension, and it becomes much easier for our eye to kind of perceive. If I had a little bit more time, I'd kind of keep on going with this render, but really fast. I'm just gonna continue to work this out. Everything always needs a shadow. Remember that this is probably going to sit on a table perhaps, and so it's really important to understand that this has a shadow and that our light source is coming from the upper left-hand corner. So if you can imagine, our light source is way up here. If you want to see that this is our sun, for instance. Okay, so these are just kind of the basics of really understanding a cylindrical type of shape. This is a very similar process that you might use for designing a lamp, designing a cup, whatever is kind of circular and has a cylinder type of shape. This is a great method. Thank you very much, and enjoy designing.